The reports from the Coral Sea reached Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters in Tokyo on May 8, 1942, and the initial assessments suggested a tactical victory that fit the pattern established since Pearl Harbor. Japanese forces had sunk the American carrier USS Lexington and damaged USS Yorktown, inflicting heavier losses on the Americans than they had sustained. The carrier Shōkaku was damaged and would require months of repair. The carrier Zuikaku had lost most of its air groups and would need time to reconstitute. But these were acceptable costs for a victory that had driven American naval forces from the waters around New Guinea and secured the flank for future operations toward Port Moresby. Admiral Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, reviewed the Coral Sea reports with satisfaction that gradually gave way to concern as he considered the operational implications. The tactical victory was real. More American tonnage sunk than Japanese losses, enemy carriers driven from the area, immediate objectives achieved. But the strategic picture was more complex. 2 fleet carriers, Shōkaku damaged and Zuikaku without aircraft, would not be available for the Midway operation planned for early June. The margin of carrier superiority that Japanese strategy depended upon was narrowing at exactly the moment when that superiority would be tested in decisive battle. The Battle of the Coral Sea represented something unprecedented in naval warfare, a carrier battle where surface ships never sighted each other, where the entire engagement was fought by aircraft operating at ranges exceeding 200 miles. The tactical lessons were significant. American carrier operations had proven more effective than Japanese intelligence had estimated. American pilots had found and attacked Japanese carriers despite poor weather and long distances. American damage control had saved Yorktown despite hits that might have sunk lesser ships. The engagement suggested that future carrier battles would be decided by factors Japanese planning had not adequately considered. Captain Minoru Genda, one of the architects of the Pearl Harbor attack and air operations planner for the Combined Fleet, studied the Coral Sea action reports with professional attention to detail that revealed patterns disturbing to Japanese assumptions about carrier warfare. The exchange ratio, Japanese aircraft lost versus American aircraft destroyed, was not as favorable as it should have been given Japanese pilot superiority and aircraft quality. American fighters were achieving kills against Japanese bombers. American anti-aircraft fire was proving more effective than expected. The invulnerability that Japanese carrier forces had demonstrated in the war's opening months was being challenged. The loss of veteran aircrews at Coral Sea particularly concerned Genda and other Japanese naval aviators. The Imperial Navy's carrier air groups consisted of highly trained pilots with years of experience, but the training pipeline to replace losses was inadequate. Each pilot shot down at Coral Sea represented not just a tactical loss, but erosion of capability that could not be quickly replaced. American forces, with larger training infrastructure and greater industrial capacity, could replace losses more rapidly. The attrition mathematics favored the Americans in ways that tactical victories could not reverse. Vice Admiral Ohnishi, serving on Yamamoto's staff, recognized that Coral Sea represented strategic failure despite tactical success. The operation's objective had been to capture Port Moresby, establishing Japanese control over southern New Guinea and threatening Australia. The invasion convoy had turned back when American carriers threatened the operation. Japanese forces had won the carrier battle but lost the campaign. Port Moresby remained in Allied hands. The strategic objective was unachieved, and 2 fleet carriers were unavailable for Midway because of a victory that had not accomplished its purpose. The Coral Sea engagement also demonstrated the effectiveness of American intelligence in detecting and responding to Japanese operations. The American carriers had been positioned to intercept the Port Moresby invasion specifically because they had intelligence about Japanese plans and timing. The cryptographic security that Japanese forces assumed protected their communications was being penetrated. The element of surprise that had characterized Japanese operations from Pearl Harbor through the East Indies was diminishing as American intelligence capabilities improved. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, who commanded the carrier strike force at Pearl Harbor and would command at Midway, understood that Coral Sea had revealed vulnerabilities in Japanese carrier operations that American forces would exploit. The doctrine of concentrating carriers for overwhelming strike power was sound, but it required finding the enemy first, achieving surprise, and destroying American carriers before they could respond effectively. Coral Sea demonstrated that American forces were capable of finding Japanese carriers, launching strikes despite disadvantageous conditions, and inflicting damage that reduced Japanese operational capability. The damaged Shōkaku limped into port at Kure for repairs that would take months to complete. The flight decks had been penetrated by American bombs, fires had damaged internal spaces, and the ship required extensive work before returning to combat. Zuikaku, though undamaged, had lost so many aircraft and pilots that reconstituting the air group would require time the Midway operations schedule did not allow. The absence of these two carriers from the Midway operation meant Nagumo would face American forces with 4 carriers instead of the 6 that had been planned. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, Yamamoto's chief of staff, calculated the operational implications of Coral Sea for Midway with growing concern. The plan for Midway assumed overwhelming Japanese carrier superiority. 6 Japanese carriers against perhaps 3 American carriers. With Shōkaku and Zuikaku unavailable, the ratio was 4 Japanese carriers against 3 American, assuming Yorktown could be repaired in time. The margin for error had narrowed significantly. The plan had also assumed surprise, but if American intelligence had detected the Port Moresby operation, they might detect Midway as well. The confidence that had characterized Japanese naval planning since Pearl Harbor was being undermined by Coral Sea's lessons. Japanese forces had achieved an unbroken string of victories, had sunk Allied warships across the Pacific, had established a defensive perimeter that seemed impregnable. But Coral Sea suggested that American forces were learning, adapting, improving their tactics and technology. The superiority that Japanese forces had demonstrated in the war's opening months was not as overwhelming as initial victories had suggested. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the air attack on Pearl Harbor and served as air operations officer, was recovering from an appendectomy and would miss the Midway operation. He understood from reviewing Coral Sea reports that Japanese carrier doctrine required revision. The assumption that finding the enemy first guaranteed victory was being challenged by American radar, which provided warning of incoming attacks and allowed defensive preparations that reduced strike effectiveness. The assumption that Japanese aircraft quality and pilot skill ensured favorable exchange ratios was being challenged by improving American tactics and equipment. The strategic situation that Coral Sea revealed was fundamentally different from what Japanese planning had assumed. American industrial capacity was producing carriers, aircraft, and trained pilots at rates that would eventually overwhelm Japanese forces regardless of tactical skill or initial advantages. The timeline for Japanese victory was narrowing. If decisive battle could not be achieved at Midway, if American carriers could not be destroyed before American production advantages became overwhelming, then Japan faced a war of attrition it could not win. Rear Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, commanding Carrier Division 2, proposed revisions to Japanese carrier tactics based on Coral Sea lessons. Combat air patrols needed to be larger and positioned more effectively. Radar warning systems needed to be improved. Damage control procedures required enhancement to match American capabilities, demonstrated when Yorktown survived hits that might have sunk Japanese carriers. The proposals were sound, but required time to implement that the Midway operation schedule did not allow. Japanese forces would fight at Midway using doctrines and capabilities that Coral Sea had shown were inadequate. The political implications of Coral Sea were masked by the tactical victory announcement. Japanese public and military were told that American carriers had been driven from the Coral Sea, that enemy forces had been defeated, that the southern perimeter was secure. The reality, that Port Moresby had not been captured, that 2 fleet carriers would be unavailable for months, that American capabilities were better than estimated, was not emphasized in reports to Tokyo. The victory narrative required for public morale conflicted with honest operational assessment. Admiral Osamu Nagano, Chief of the Naval General Staff, confronted the contradiction between tactical success and strategic failure that Coral Sea represented. The battle had been won by the metrics that mattered in traditional naval warfare. Enemy tonnage sunk, own forces preserved, tactical objectives achieved. But the strategic objective had not been accomplished. The operational reserve had been depleted, and the margin for Midway had narrowed. The contradiction suggested that traditional metrics were inadequate for carrier warfare, where strategic effects mattered more than tonnage ratios. The lessons of Coral Sea were still being absorbed when Nagumo's carriers sailed for Midway in late May. The operation proceeded on schedule despite concerns about reduced carrier strength, despite questions about whether surprise could be achieved, despite evidence that American capabilities had been underestimated. The momentum of planning and the confidence built through 6 months of uninterrupted victories overcame the cautionary lessons that Coral Sea offered. Japanese naval forces sailed toward Midway, carrying assumptions that Coral Sea had challenged but not destroyed. The retrospective analysis after Midway's catastrophic defeat would identify Coral Sea as the turning point where Japanese momentum peaked and began to decline. The tactical victory had masked strategic failure. The carrier losses, Shōkaku damaged, Zuikaku without aircraft, had reduced the force available for Midway at the critical moment. The intelligence that had positioned American carriers at Coral Sea would position them perfectly at Midway. The pilot losses at Coral Sea had begun the attrition of irreplaceable veteran air crews that would cripple Japanese carrier operations. When Japanese generals learned that the Battle of the Coral Sea changed everything, the knowledge came not from the battle itself, but from its consequences at Midway and beyond. Coral Sea had appeared to be another victory in a string of victories, had been reported as such, had been celebrated as confirmation of Japanese naval superiority. The reality was different. Coral Sea was the first battle where American carrier forces had effectively challenged Japanese operations, the first battle where tactical victory did not achieve strategic objectives, the first indication that the tide was turning. Admiral Yamamoto understood earlier than most that Coral Sea represented a strategic inflection point. The reduction of available carriers for Midway, the evidence of improving American capabilities, the failure to achieve the Port Moresby objective despite tactical success, these factors suggested that the window for decisive victory was closing. The Midway operation proceeded because it had been planned and because Japanese strategy required destroying American carriers before production advantages became overwhelming. But the confidence that had characterized planning before Coral Sea was replaced by recognition that American forces were more capable than assumed. The Battle of the Coral Sea changed everything, not through dramatic defeat, but through revealing that Japanese advantages were narrower than believed, that American forces were more capable than estimated. The tactical victories did not guarantee strategic success, and that the attrition of irreplaceable resources, veteran pilots, fleet carriers, would eventually favor the enemy with greater industrial capacity. These lessons were absorbed slowly and incompletely, masked by the tactical victory narrative and by institutional momentum toward operations already planned. The officers who studied Coral Sea reports with professional attention understood that something fundamental had shifted. The carrier battles ahead would not be the one-sided victories that had characterized the war's opening. American forces had learned from defeats, had improved their tactics and capabilities, and were being equipped with radar and aircraft that reduced Japanese advantages. The mathematical reality of attrition warfare, that Japan could not replace losses as quickly as America, meant that even favorable exchange ratios would eventually lead to Japanese defeat if the war continued long enough. When Japanese generals learned the Battle of the Coral Sea changed everything, they confronted the reality that their window for victory was narrowing, that American capabilities were better than intelligence had estimated, that tactical success did not ensure strategic victory, and that the war they were fighting was becoming a contest of industrial capacity, where Japan's initial advantages would be overcome by American production. The battle that had been celebrated as a victory was actually the moment when Japanese offensive momentum peaked and the long defensive struggle toward defeat began.